Stu Leonard is a relatively famous American entrepreneur and marketer. He said if you press a button and a light comes on, keep pressing the button. Well, we did a show a couple of weeks ago with Mike Arnold, who is an author, and he's written a book called The Epicenter Nigeria. And he really opened our eyes to this country that I'll say it in the first person, I knew so little about. I mean, I knew it was an African nation, and that's about it. I didn't know whether it's in the north, south, east, west of Africa. And especially, I did not realize the amount of wealth that is in Nigeria, nor did I realize the amount of poverty, nor did I realize the amount of corruption. And so all of that wrapped into one. So I started trying to educate myself a little more on Nigeria. I guess the point I was about to make is on that one episode, we got 1.3 million views, eclipsed any episode that we've done in our 4 years on this program. So we're going to keep pressing the light, not because we're just opportunistic capitalists, which we are, but more importantly, we want to learn about the world stage and other countries besides just our own. So I have tracked down Philip Jakpor, and he is the executive director of the Renevlyn Development Initiative. Philip, welcome to the truth. By the end of the show, I'll be sure to get the pronunciation of your first name.
Yeah,
I'm
Philip.
just going to call you Philip in the meantime.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Renevlyn Development Initiative, and that'll get us started.
Well, my background is journalism. When I when I was on the field, and that was between 2002 and 2007, I covered a lot that had to do with the environment and agriculture. So I moved away from journalism, that mainstream journalism, in 2007, and I decided to do a lot more in the environment space. But Renevlyn Development Initiative is a Nigerian non-governmental organization. It was founded in 2023. Myself and some journalists, set up this organization. And essentially, what do we do? We work with indigenous communities, grassroots groups, and civil society to expose and challenge corporate impunity on sound environmental practices and human rights abuse that you find in most of Nigeria's oil-rich communities. But we don't work only on oil and gas. There are also other um, natural resources in Nigeria. It's like Nigeria is just that country which has natural resources everywhere, solid minerals. So essentially, what we do is to work with those communities to see what's happening and expose what does not seem right.
So is it an economic development organization, would you say?
It's just a civil society organization. So we are more into advocacy.
An advocacy group.
Yeah, an advocacy group. And of course, we poke our eyes into economic issues. So, oil wealth, solid mineral extraction, ultimately, if it's well managed, it translates into economic gains for the country and for the people. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening. There's huge um, wealth in Nigeria, just like you mentioned in your intro, beyond oil and gas, which Nigeria has in abundance, which is our mainstay, which is where about 85 to 90% of our revenue comes from. There's also other solid minerals,
You said
largely untapped.
85 or 90% of your
Yeah,
income
yeah,
comes from where?
yeah. It comes from oil and gas.
Oil and gas, yes.
Yes.
In fact, is Nigeria the sixth largest producer of petroleum?
It's within that range, 6, 7. It continues to fluctuate.
And a member of OPEC.
Yeah, Nigeria is a member of OPEC.
So give us a little 30,000 foot view of Nigeria. You're on the northwest coast of Africa, is that correct?
Nigeria is in the western part of Africa, and Nigeria is actually the most populous black nation on earth. We have a population of about 240 million people. and that is, well, about half of the population in Africa alone. Um, but beyond that, Nigeria is rich, like I said, in a lot of natural resources, but unfortunately, it has not translated into um, it has not translated into, real benefit for the local people, especially where you have these natural resources coming from. Unfortunately, that is the situation.
240 million people. That is extraordinary. And what is the standard of living in Nigeria? What is the average income of the Nigerian people?
Well, most of the Nigerian people live below $2 a day. It's as bad as that. Um, it's a nation, like I mentioned, that has a lot in terms of natural resources, oil and gas, and every other thing. But then it has been largely mismanaged. Successive administrations have continued to plunder the resources of the country. Um, what is supposed to be gains, which will trickle down into meaningful life for the people, development, good healthcare, good infrastructure, does not exist. Um, we've been blessed with natural resources, but we've not been blessed with very very good leaders. Also, that's the major problem. Most Nigerians live on about $2 a day, and of course, you and I know that that is totally abysmal.
So what is the name of your leader?
The leader of Nigeria today is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Now,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
read just recently that he graduated from a school in Nigeria. The only problem with that was that he graduated in a year that allegedly was before the school even opened its doors. Does that give us a glimpse into who we're dealing with here?
Well, that is a subject I do. Most Nigerians don't want to delve into, and I certainly don't want to delve into that issue. But there's a lot of controversy surrounding, where the president schooled um, in Nigeria. Of course, he lived in the United States for quite a long time.
Where did he
But then,
live?
yeah, I think Chicago or so. But then there's this controversy about, where he schooled in Nigeria and things like that. But
So do you think he
that
knew
that is
Barack
politics.
Obama when he was here?
There's a possibility because I think they grew around the same period. I think he was in the United States in the 70s and late 70s and sometime in the 80s, maybe early 90s.
Well,
So
wasn't
definitely.
wasn't David Axelrod involved in his election as president of Nigeria, or did I imagine that?
Well, I don't know that. I don't know that.
So tell us about President Tinubu. Tinubu.
Well, Tinubu is the president of Nigeria at the moment. He was one of the leaders of the pro-democracy movement when Nigeria was under military rule, under the dictatorship of a general called Abacha, now late. Um, Tinubu was one of those who spearheaded campaigns for the military to quit, um, and that advocacy was a fallout from what Nigerians are judged as the freest and fairest elections, which happened in 1993. We had um, Abiola, who was Chief MK Abiola, who was from the southern part of the country, and he won, like I said, what is adjudged to be the freest and fairest elections. But unfortunately, the military government at the time annulled it. Um, Abiola resisted, and then he had a lot of supporters, a lot of young activists at the time who supported the advocacy for him to be installed and for the military to leave. And now President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was one of those who was part of that, the arrowhead of that campaign. Traveled around the world, went to so many places, including the United States, to seek the intervention of the U.S. in ensuring that Abiola got his mandate. Well, that advocacy, Abacha died at a point, Abiola himself died at a point, and the military had no option. The pressure was so much. They had to quit government and hand over to a civilian administration in 1999. So, uh, uh, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was one of those who spearheaded that effort. And immediately after that effort, he also contested for governorship elections. He won in Lagos, did 2 terms, and subsequently he became like a political godfather, one of those who ensured that the roadmap he created for Lagos was sustained by subsequent administrations. Like the 2023 elections that brought him in is one of the most controversial elections in Nigeria's history. But then he was declared the president. He's been the president for uh, about 3 years now. He's seeking a second term re-election. Um, I think that's his story. But then there are also other issues surrounding um, what has happened in the last 3 years, the promises Nigerians were, what Nigerians were promised, and what the situation is today. I don't think many Nigerians are happy. Many Nigerians feel we could get a better deal than what we are getting today. So it's and it was expected that someone of his own nature who led the campaigns against the military would do better. But like I said, Nigerians are not too happy. We expect more than what we are getting today. Um, the 2027 elections, which he is also contesting for, has begun, and we also have other people contesting for elective offices. Nigerians are gearing up to exercise their franchise. Um, so that is where we are today. That's the much I can say about him.
So we just fact checked it. Tinubu, Obama, and Axelrod did all live in Chicago at the same time, and Axelrod has served as a consultant to Tinubu in his campaign. Do you think that Nigeria is a safe place today? I mean, could I come and visit Nigeria? Or I guess I should have asked, could I have come to Nigeria 3 weeks ago before I've started this commentary on Nigeria and started looking behind the curtain? But could an ordinary U.S. citizen visit Nigeria today and have a expectation of safety?
Nigeria is a big country. You have 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. I speak as a Nigerian. Of course, there are places you can visit that are safe, but then there are also a lot of places you will need a lot of security to visit now because of the Boko Haram insurgency, banditry, which has created a lot of insecurity in the, especially the northern part of Nigeria, especially the northeastern part of Nigeria. Um, but then there are places you can visit. I'm in Nigeria. There are places you can visit. The To a large extent, the southwest is still relatively safe. The south is safe. The southeast is relatively safe. But then there's a lot of crisis in the northern part of the country, which is fueled by landowners, herders crisis, and then of course the Boko Haram crisis, which predates this administration, the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. But we had felt with the criticism that previous administrations got for the way they handled insecurity, this government will have done better. We've not we are not quite satisfied. We've had promises. We continue to hope that those promises materialize. But then, back to the question: is Nigeria a safe place to visit? Yeah, you can visit some places in Nigeria, but there are some places you will need a lot of security to visit. So that's the much I can say about that.
So we're talking to Philip Jakpor, who is the executive director of the Nigerian Renevlyn Development Initiative. One of your interests, as I understand it, is mining that is taking place in Nigeria as we speak. As you know, batteries have become and have a high demand all worldwide, really. Apple relies on batteries, Microsoft, Tesla, they all depend on power and battery power in particular. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Nigeria has tremendous deposits of lithium, which is the primary natural resource that goes into the production of these batteries. Tell us about the mining of lithium in Nigeria, if you could.
Yes, you are right. Nigeria has, I think, well, experts have said Nigeria has about $34 billion worth of untapped lithium deposits, which again is in the part, largely in the part of Nigeria that is not too safe, that you need a lot of security to visit. Lithium in commercial quantity was discovered in Nigeria in, I think, around 2021, 22. And a little bit about the mining sector in Nigeria. The mining sector in Nigeria is very, very opaque. Nigeria has relied on oil and gas for decades, about nearly six decades. Um, and when commercial extraction of oil started, every other sector took the backstage. Agriculture took the backstage. Even solid minerals that were there before, tin, or the coal, they were all neglected in favor of oil. I think the dip in oil prices that followed COVID-19 pandemic was what forced the Nigerian government to start looking at, other sources of income beyond oil and gas. And fortunately, lithium, which is a transition mineral, is one of the resources that was discovered in commercial quantity again in different parts of Nigeria, including a place called Nasarawa State, which is in central Nigeria. To answer you, yes, Nigeria has, very, very commercial quantity of lithium scattered in different parts of the country. I think about 10 or so states has huge lithium deposits.
Okay, so who buys Nigerian oil? Who are the who do you sell to?
Well, Nigeria sells to a variety of countries across the globe. I think at a point, even the United States, buys bought Nigerian oil. But then there are still other states. I think as at 2004, the United States was still um, the largest buyer of oil in Nigeria. But then there are still, like I said, other countries. I think France still buys Nigerian oil, Spain, the Netherlands, Italy, you know, um, these countries buy Nigerian oil.
So
Uh,
basically, the European community.
Mostly the European community. Yeah.
Okay, so you have land ownership in Nigeria, and I guess most of the land is owned by people who have inherited it from generations before. Is that accurate?
Yes, you're right.
So are they not getting rich?
Well, ideally they should be rich, but unfortunately they are not rich. No thanks
How can they
to.
not be rich when the oil is underneath their property?
So there's this law called the Land Use Act of 1979. I think it has been it's been reviewed now, which vests all lands. Yes, ancestrally people belong to different places, including those places where you have those oil resources. But at the law, the language of the law does not give that much power to people in those communities to control what is theirs. So the Land Use Act vests all lands in any part of Nigeria, in the hands of the government. The where I come from, if for instance oil is discovered, the government can choose to evict us and then take over that land. And of course, the language of the government is that it's for economic development, which is for all of us. So that law is one law that Nigerians have been are demanding that the government reviews so that people who are indigenous to a community, whose ancestral patrimonies, a particular community, should be able to determine what their lands are used for and the benefits they derive. So I come from the Niger Delta, where most of the oil and gas come from. So it has taken us about 30 or so years of advocacy, for instance, for the government to agree to give us 30% of the revenue that comes from oil and gas where I come from. So we only get about 13% of royalties, from whatever is extracted from our lands, and the rest goes into the national purse. So unfortunately, that's how the law is skewed in Nigeria. The government owns every land.
So it's property ownership without the benefits. Where does the money go then if the government is, claims ownership? Are they taking the money from the sale of the oil?
Well, of course, that's what happens. Um, but then the language of the law is what um, activists like us have been challenging. And our position is that the government is holding the land in trust for the people. The government says the same thing. So if it's holding the land in trust, it's actually that of the people. So the framing in the law is where the problem is, and successive administrations have done everything to maintain status quo. So uh, that's why local people get evicted from their ancestral lands. That's why government and people who don't belong to those ancestral land determine what goes to those local people in terms of royalties. And it's unfortunate, but that's the situation we found ourselves.
As an outsider, it sounds to me, based on what I'm hearing from you, and you're not the first person I've heard it from, is that the Land Use Act of 1979 was really just a taking. It was a money grab from the people who own the land and should be the rightful beneficiaries of the natural resources buried below it.
It's not just a money; it's both money and land grab, because the government can also choose to evict any citizen from what is supposed to be an ancestral land for any reason that the government deems fit. And we've had people challenge government, but it never, achieves anything meaningful. It all revolves around the language of the Land Use Act, until we frame that language as Nigerians want it to be framed, not those in power. Will continue to, go around in circles in terms of, benefits that ancestral communities are supposed to get from the natural resources, that's their own.
Tell us, by extension, then, how does that impact the mining of lithium, which you say occurs mostly in the central part of the country?
I think that's a very good connection. So lithium is found in largely in the central part of Nigeria, largely in the central part of Nigeria, but you can also find it in other parts of the country. But the largest deposits are in the central part of Nigeria. So the same challenge you have with oil and gas, we also have with lithium extraction. Um, Ideally, so-called investors, companies that extract, are supposed to engage local communities. That's what the law says, of course. engage local communities, conduct what they call environmental and social impact assessment, which the local people are supposed to be part and parcel of, before extraction starts happening. But unfortunately, because of that same Land Use Act, which gives the state the power, you have a lot of so-called investors only talk to the governor of a state, and then a community is mapped out, shared out, and people who have farmlands suddenly wake up and they discover that their farmlands are being partitioned or being excavated, or you have other forms of activities that they don't sanction happening, and they find it hard to resist it because those companies will readily tell you that, look, don't talk to us, go and talk to your government. We've had a lot of cases like that with lithium in a place called Nasarawa State, where we observed that a lot of environmentally unsound practices have happened and continue to happen. Um, and the problem is that the local people do not have a say.
This is what I have read and I have understood that rogue elements come into a village, they terrorize and frighten the people that live in that village to the point that they leave. And if they don't leave, they then burn down the village. So anybody that remained flees for their own safety. That they then bring in mining companies that will extract the lithium from the ground, usually using child labor, and they do it with picks, axes, and shovels. They load it into trucks that then are sent to the nearest port. Where would that be? What would the port city be?
The port city is actually Lagos, where I am.
In Lagos, where you are.
Yes.
They pass multiple police checkpoints along the highway to get to Lagos, where they are summarily waved through. I don't know if they pay a tax or a passage fee, but they're not intercepted or deterred from proceeding to Lagos, where they are loaded on ships where the paperwork is falsified, often calling it just bare earth, soil, when actually it's lithium, which avoids having to pay an export duty, and that it is then loaded onto freighters, which leave and sail to China, where it is offloaded and turned into lithium batteries, which are then sold to the consumers. Do I got that right? Oh, one last, and as you alluded to, they leave the village decimated. They don't reclaim the soil. They don't put it back nice and neat. That is just a vast wasteland when they're done. Have we got that right?
So let me put it this way.
Tell me what I said that's wrong.
Some elements are right. Some elements are right. Um, but the question, which then helps to tilt the way I frame it, is this: can elements that don't know the community, that don't have anything to do with the community, just come into a community and do those things and get out? We've seen in the course of my own work some elements of complicity. I will always say this, that no mining company comes into a community without some form of permits from government. So everything you've described would only happen because you have some unscrupulous government officials. Not everybody, whose responsibility is to ensure that the right thing is done, and they look the other way because they get some form of benefits, and then they allow these illegal miners to go into these communities, recruit child labor. Now, sometimes you also have willing participants. Now, why I say willing participants, you have those local communities who know they have the resources and there's no single benefit to them. And they feel rather than stay back and watch these resources carted away, why not try to hack a living, So they are victims of the system. Now, the rare earths we are talking about don't live through Lagos alone. They also live through the borders in the northern part of the country. So it's not they don't all come to Lagos and go to China. Some come to Lagos and go to China. Some through the borders in the northern part of the country and go to the Middle East. So it's a combination of some of the things you have mentioned and what I've added. We found out over time that there's some level of complicity. I've done a lot of work beyond lithium. I've done a lot of work with tin mining and from my own observation in some of the communities I've visited, these miners, the illegal ones, have some connection with people in government who give them the permits to do these things. And so that's why they are brazen. That's why they're able to go to a community and do these things and, you know, go unchallenged. So to a large
So,
extent, some of the things you've mentioned are right, but I decided to complement it by making you understand that it even goes beyond just coming to Lagos and China, but also going to the Middle East, and then
so
some
the
level of complicity by people in government.
so the demand for lithium is at a global historical high. Are the people in Nigeria getting rich who own the land where the lithium is being mined?
No, no, no. People in those local communities are not getting rich. The people who get rich are just a cabal uh, who exploit, the ignorance in some cases, illiteracy in these communities, and then go into those communities and start doing these things. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of Chinese. In fact, you have a lot of Chinese in virtually all communities where you have lithium. My organization did a report which we released in December,
Why does that
titled
not
yeah,
surprise me?
"Silent." The title of the report is "Silent Conquest: The Chinese Infiltration of Nigeria's Solid Mineral Sector."
So
In
it's
every
basically just thievery.
It's thievery. And virtually all the arrests that a government agency, the Economic and Financial Crime Commission, has done in the lithium sector always involved a Chinese
I hope
national.
that horn that we just heard isn't the state police announcing their arrival outside your house or your office. Jiminy Christmas. Well, is it safe in central Nigeria? Uh, are there reports of people being murdered or their lives being taken?
Things like that happen in some parts of central Nigeria. That is the reality. Anybody denying that will just be um, trying to deceive the world. A lot. See, the central part of Nigeria is also rich in beyond solid minerals. Is the green belt. That's where most of the food comes from.
Uh,
So we have a lot of competition for land in that area. And we have groups that want to uproot local people who are ancestral to some of those places so that they can take over those places and then, dominate that region. That is happening. It is reality. And it's happening a lot in central Nigeria.
and where in Nigeria is agriculture being done?
Most of the agricultural lands are also in the central part of Nigeria. That's where you
In the
have
central
vast.
part of Nigeria.
Yes, that's where you have vast land for rice cultivation, tubers, and um, a lot of food crops come from that part of the country.
And
That
where
is
are
the
those
food belt.
products and where are those products going? Do they stay in Nigeria or are they also being exported, and if so, where?
Most of those foods are consumed in Nigeria and in some surrounding African nations.
Well, at
So
least it's staying on
Niger, Mali, it goes as far as Niger, Chad, in the northern flank, and then of course countries like Republic of Benin, Togo, in the southwestern part of Nigeria, and then Cameroon also in the part of that part of Nigeria.
Well, I got to say, Philip, you're really kind of bumming me out here, and I'm sure the rest of our audience. What I'm hearing is you have a population that's two-thirds as large as the United States. You're a rich country in terms of oil and gas
Very
and
rich.
lithium, and you're also a large producer of agriculture. It sounds like a very rich country, yet your people are making $2 a day. Have we heard you right?
Less than $2 a day.
What a travesty. This is a story we're going to stay with and we're going to stay on. I would love to come to Nigeria, but I'm frankly a little afraid to do it. But we're going to continue to push the truth. And I appreciate your coming on our show today to talk about it. Is there anything else you wanted to say or explain before we wrap it up here?
It's a pleasure being on your show. Keep up the good work.
Well, thank you, Philip. And I appreciate what you're doing. Philip Jakpor, he is in Lagos, Nigeria, and he is the executive director of the Renevlyn Development Initiative. And we really appreciate your sharing the information with us. And we hope to have you back on. This is a story we're going to continue to follow. And, I just hate injustice. And it sounds like you've got a hefty quotient of it. Is there any light at the end of this dark tunnel? Do you see any hope that you can get a honest government for the people?
Well, I believe the people have to work for it. It is our fight. We can't run away. This is the only country we have. Nobody can do it for us. We'll just have to keep chipping away. I believe that one day, someday, we'll get it right.
Well, we have a lot in common. And Ronald Reagan said, freedom is not free. You have to work for it. And I think
Exactly.
that you have echoed those very good words here today. So I wish you well. I wish the people of Nigeria well. And I hope that you all, your citizenry truly get the payday that they are deserving of, because at the end of the day, that oil and gas, that lithium, those natural resources are yours, not for the Chinese or other people that are putting their hand in the pie. So I hope that you do get brighter days ahead. Again, thank you, Philip Jakpor, for coming on The Truth today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.